Halloween is a 1978 horror movie directed by John Carpenter and written by John Carpenter and Deborah Hill and released to theaters on October 25th, 1978. Now, if you somehow don't know what Halloween is, which couldn't possibly be true, let me give you a quick crash course on the franchise. Halloween is a film that came out in 1978 and was directed by John Carpenter, and is considered to be one of the films that popularized the slasher genre. While not being the first in the genre, is considered to be the one that sort of started its overall popularity with the public, and led to the rise of things like Friday the 13th and A Nightmare on Elm Street that would ultimately come multiple years later. Despite the fact that the film was made on a relatively small budget of only $300,000, the film would later gross multiple millions of dollars and result in multiple sequels and multiple interpretations over the years gone by. Now, to dive into the entire history of this franchise and its sequels would be a monumental task and would take multiple hours, but the important thing to gain from all this is that Halloween is a historically important film for horror movies. So important, in fact, that in 2006, Congress inducted it into the National Film Registry, an honor typically reserved for films that have a cultural, historical, or aesthetic significance. But that's not what we're here to talk about today. Today we're talking about something that was recently announced. Something that may be very significant for the franchise going forward. I am talking, of course, about this, and I am sorry that the audio will be muted, as for copyright purposes. Yep, that's right. At Gamescom 2025, IllFonic and Gun Media announced that they would be partnering up to create a game based off the 1978 film Halloween called Halloween. Now, it's not the most original name of all time, but I guess it works. But the important thing to note is that this is going to be Michael Myers' first game in a very long time. This is not old Mikey Boy's first introduction to the world of video games. In fact, his first video game ever was actually for the Atari 2600 back in 1983 that looked like this. Audio muted for copyright purposes. So yeah, not the most graceful introduction into the world of video games, but he has had some other notable ones, for instance being a playable character in the video game Dead by Daylight, and having his own Retro Realms video game that was released as a package deal with Ash and the Evil Dead, but he has had a few notable ones, but this new one is the first one he's had solo in the modern era. But as you know, IllFonic and Gun Media have already made a couple games based off other horror franchises. IllFonic and Gun Media developed the Friday the 13th game, while Gun Media went off separately to develop the Texas Chainsaw game that came out in 2023. Now, the only one of their games that I have played is the Texas Chainsaw one, and I do think it is neat, and I would genuinely like to tell you if I had any experience with the Friday the 13th one, but as you know, the online servers for it were shut down at the end of 2024, and I can't exactly break myself to spend $20 or more on a game that is now half useless. But the thing that most people are excited about the new Halloween game is that it will feature something that the two previous games did not feature, an actual story mode. The other two games were fully multiplayer focused. Now, Friday the 13th had some single-player missions that allowed you to play out certain events from the films, but they were never really a proper story mode. And in total, the story missions only added about 5.5 hours of extra gameplay to your game. And the game at launch didn't even initially have them, they were added later on through free updates. And the Texas Chainsaw game didn't even have any story missions. It was fully online focused. In fact, the game cannot be played at all without an internet connection. But the thing that this game will have that the other two didn't is that people who were involved with the first movie will be involved with this game. For instance, John Carpenter has come back to be the executive producer of the game, and the other executive producer is Malek Akkad. Now, you may not immediately know who Malek Akkad is, and you would be forgiven for doing so, but he is quite important. He is the son of Mustafa Akkad, who was the original producer of the original Halloween film. Not only was he the original producer, but he also fully financed the original film. Yep, all of that $300,000 budget all came from him. So if it weren't for him financing the project, Halloween would have literally never happened. He was also the producer for the first 8 Halloween films and was involved in the franchise until his death in 2005. And his son, Malek Akkad, has continued on his father's legacy, being the producer of multiple Halloween films himself, including the 3 most recent, and is currently the CEO and chairman of the company that owns the rights to the Halloween franchise. And overall, people are just quite excited for this game, and people are hoping that will be better than the last 2, and based off the screenshots that I've seen and some information I've seen, it does seem the game has some hope at being really good. But I don't know. What do you all think? Comment down below what you think the game will be like. But thank you all for watching the video. I hope you learned something interesting, and I hope that you all enjoyed this long video, as it took me a long time to make. Alright, see y'all later, comment down below. And of course, even though it's only August, Happy Halloween.